In this section, we'll cover what the Minnesota Promise Act legislation is, how much funding is available, and when applications for funding will become open. The Minnesota Promise Act's mission is to help disadvantaged businesses in underinvested areas reach their full potential. Promise stands for providing resources and opportunity and maximizing investments in striving entrepreneurs. Approved by the Minnesota State Legislature and signed into law by Governor Tim Walz, the Minnesota Promise Act is overseen by the Minnesota State Agency DEED. DEED stands for Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. The Promise Act is funded by the Minnesota Legislature to support the growth and repositioning of businesses located or who operate in the neighborhoods of communities that have been affected by structural racial discrimination, civil unrest, highlighted in 2020, lack of access to capital, lack of regional economic diversification, a loss of population, or an aging population. This is the language that is within the language of the law and has been used to determine the neighborhoods that were selected for the first phase of this program. Minnesota DEED selected Promise Act partners to manage the application and distribution of funding for different areas of Minnesota. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, Neighborhood Development Center, and the Metropolitan Economic Development Association were selected as service providers. In Greater Minnesota, the Initiative Foundation was selected. The Promise Act partners are responsible for the management and distribution of grants and loans to support disadvantaged small businesses located in certain areas across Minnesota. Program funds for St. Paul and Minneapolis include a grant program managed by Neighborhood Development Center of $79 million, and MEDA is managing a loan program of $24 million. This presentation will focus on the grant program specifically, and this slide represents how we anticipate funding will roll out over the next 2 years. One rule within the legislature is that all of the funding will be spread out over the course of 2 years. Only half will be accessed in that first year of 2024, and half will be accessible in the second year of 2025. Since 2024 is the first year of the program, there will be a small pilot round as we put in place the structures needed in order to accept and process applications. This will be known as the pilot round and will kick off in January of 2024. Timeframes for round 1 and round 2 of 2024 are still being worked out, along with timeline for 2025.